This one is demand for quickening activity. Let the waves of thy power dance on the river of my activity. As thou art intelligently busy making atoms, flowers, universes, so teach me to be cheerfully busy always. Thou art ever busy, yet eternally smiling in joyous hearts. Bless me, that I may wear thy unfading smile as I work in the factory of life. And this reading is from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda, which are parallel commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita. This week's reading is entitled, The Eternal Now. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. When will I find God? Many devotees have asked this question. Because worldly goals require time, usually, for their fulfillment, we imagine time to be a factor on the spiritual path. And so it is, but only because we think it is. God is as much with us now as He will ever be. It is not He who needs to come to us, we need to come to Him. And that process of coming is a matter of transforming our self-perception. In the Gospel of St. John, Jesus Christ says, Say ye not, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes and look upon the fields, they are white already to harvest. There is a practical teaching in these words apart from their statement that we have God already and have only to realize that truth. Jesus is saying, lift up your eyes and look. To hold the eyes uplifted is the best position for meditation. For the seat of superconsciousness lies at a point midway between the eyebrows, in the frontal lobe of the brain, just behind that point. This point is known also as the Christ Center. By lifting your eyes and concentrating there, you will find it easier to enter the state of ecstasy. That is why saints in every religion have often been observed during states of deep inner communion with their eyes uplifted, focused on the inner light, white, as Jesus said, already to harvest. The Bhagavad Gita goes further into this meditative teaching. In the 6th chapter it states, Holding the spine firm and neck and head erect and motionless, let the yogi focus his eyes at the starting point of the nose, the point between the eyebrows. Let not his gaze roam elsewhere. In meditation, tell yourself, I have him already. I am alive forever in the divine life. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. Well, this is such a important topic, such a practical one also, the eternal now. Oh, there you are too. Okay. And sitting in the right spot. See, she doesn't confuse me with all this musical chairs. But I hope it's not too cold. I hope that wasn't the reason. Okay. This topic is so important and practical, as I said. First of all, why even say it? And what is the eternal now? Well, we read in the New Path, I believe it is, or else it's in the Essence of Self-Realization, that Master says there is no actual divine reality of time. And of course, Swamiji says so in the reading as well. He said, in fact, nothing is happening in the past. Everything is happening right now. And that's a deep thought, because it's incomprehensible at first, it may seem. We're so used to time. You can say, really, if there's no time, then guess what? I'm still in bed. But the thing is that we can feel that maybe there is something to this. For example, we're given in the Yuga theory, which is just general. Sri Yukteswarji explained it, but it's in the scriptures, and more than scriptures, it's in the planet and the sun and the galaxy. It just is self-evident, not self-evident, but it is evident, and it doesn't depend on us to believe in it one way or another. I'm not saying that as a dogma. I'm just saying look to the facts, see if it feels right to you. We always have to make up our own minds about everything, and if it's true to our experience. But if the scriptures are true in stating this, and also if reality is what it is, then it simply is. As the wonderful conversation goes in Autobiography of a Yogi, where Sri Yukteswar says to Master, why don't you get an astrological armlet, this bangle here? And Master says, why, sir? I don't believe in astrology. And Sri Yukteswarji says, it is never a question of belief. The only thing that matters is whether a thing is true. He said the law of gravity worked just as efficiently before Newton as after. And he said the cosmos would be fairly chaotic if its laws were conditioned on the fact of human belief, the presence or absence of human belief. And when I read that, I just went, because, first of all, I had a scientific bent, a scientific outlook to begin with, so it matched up with my taste, you might say. But also, growing up, I had a lot of people telling me that life was other than it was. I had a friend telling me that you have to earn a lot of money. And why? So that when it's time to go on vacation, you can vacation in Europe. Especially, suppose you like skiing. The skiing in the Alps is quite wonderful. And I pointed out that I didn't want to have to spend, what do you get, at most 2 weeks of vacation? I didn't want to spend 50 weeks doing something that I didn't like just so I could have 2 weeks of vacation. Seems a rather dumb percentage to me. And the person just wouldn't accept that. And then when I told it to a friend of mine, and I said, don't you think that makes sense? She said, but the skiing in the Alps is very nice. Just like, okay. First of all, I'd never skied before anyway, so what was the point of any of that? When I finally tried skiing, I had a great time. The first time I skied was about a month before I moved to India, and then all skiing was over. So, but the Yuga theory explains that in Kali Yuga we are bound by matter, that everything that physical objects are the prevailing reality, and that sort of the fundamental reality is just objects. And you see people still caught up in that because we're transitioning from Kali Yuga into Dwapara. In Dwapara Yuga, the fundamental reality is energy, and we even have that described for us in physics by Newton. In fact, I think it was that energy can be neither created nor destroyed. That we have even, I guess it was after Newton, but this concept of from Einstein that E equals mc squared. That's really the beginning of saying matter and energy are equivalent. And then also, a little bit later, de Broglie had this E equals h nu, which just means every energy level has a certain vibration. That's what the nu is. It relates to vibration, hertz or whatever. And so so even putting those two together, we have that matter, because it's energy, and energy also has vibration. That matter has vibration. And when you look at electrons, and I remember something vague from my quantum mechanics class, but that electrons, protons, all these particles have a certain vibration that you can even see on through some real fancy thing that I can't remember. But that just as we could say everything is vibration, from the Vedas, that the one wanted to become many, and so the appearance of duality and all that, that's the same thing. It's being rediscovered because it's a truth. But, so, in Dwapara Yuga, the limitation is that we overcome is the limitation of space. And in Treta Yuga, the limitation that we overcome is the limitation of time. Now, how do we overcome the limitation of time? Well, wait for Treta Yuga. It's just, about 2,000 more years or something, and then so maybe we'll have lunch first. But so that takes time. Huh? We can't maybe relate to that at first, but overcoming the delusion of space we've seen in our own lifetime, especially if it's been a little bit of a longer lifetime. We see that, my gosh, just yesterday I called my earthly parents. I spoke to my mother. She answered the phone, and she's in, America, near to New York. And she said, I'm just laughing because here I'm talking to you in India, and your father, who is in the next room, is speaking to your cousin in the UK. And so it's just, what is space in any of this, really, especially if you do a FaceTime call and you say, oh, you got a haircut since we last talked. It's all just, we really experienced that during the pandemic, that we were all in separate houses, but it didn't feel that way because we were all seeing. In fact, one of our friends who always came on from his bedroom or wherever, which has this bright green paint, when we first saw him in the center, we said, well, but you need the green background, otherwise we don't recognize you. So it was just sweet. But we had that sense of, and there's your house and all that. I don't know if it's inside a pet or wherever. But I've been there, at least with my eyes. And so we have this sense of banishing space easily. Brahmachari Jamal once needed to renew his visa for India. So he flew to San Francisco, renewed his visa, and flew back to Delhi in 48 hours. I think he holds the record. And just amazing how, and to just say, I'm going to the U.S., I'll see you Nalaniki. That you can just go and come like that. And we had, even when we were on Zoom, we started to realize that we were having connections from all over the world. And just the same as, in one sense, during lockdown, CIT Nagar East was just as far away as New York. You couldn't go anywhere. But we had people joining us from UK, members from here who were there. The most impressive, though, was Kalarani and Isaki Muthu joining the class from the airplane. Wow, talk about banishing space. Not only the airplane itself, but there they were, kind of just tuning into the class. I noticed they weren't wearing headphones, so I wondered if their neighbors were joining in on the class also. But anyway, it really, that was thrilling. Just the concept of it. Somehow it made me think differently about all of this, because you expect, at least if somebody's talking to you, they're on Earth. They weren't even on the Earth at that time. Yes, the Earth, if you include its atmosphere, fine. But still, they weren't on the ground. Really quite something. But we have experienced this. So we have, and especially with Zoom, we have much more of a sense of how space just isn't really a barrier. And so when we then, we can maybe possibly extrapolate that space used to be a barrier. Even just, when I came to Chennai even in the mid-90s, Adyar was nothing except the Theosophical Society, trees inside and out, trees everywhere. Just a big forest, beautiful. But, there was no, coffee day and all these other things there. It's just, now you forget Adyar, Thiruvanmiyur, OMR, you have to go pretty far before you get outside the city. And so we've seen even in that this concept of how much things have changed in that amount of time. And yet, when we extrapolate, we have overcome the limitation of space to some extent. The next limitation of space is obviously even beyond this planet, because that we still feel limited by, that you can't really travel anywhere off this planet. You might say, well, I don't know that I would want to. If I go somewhere else, idli, irkava, what will the sambar be made out of? So maybe we just stay in Chennai. But the thing is that this whole concept of, traveling at the speed of light and it takes too long and all of that, Master said certain shortcuts exist. That's all he said on the matter. And he hinted at in other ways. So once it was raining very hard and for a long time in Los Angeles for I don't know if it was weeks, but I think it was something like that. And Master said, well, it's better than, he said, it could be worse. He said, on some planets it rains all the time. And he went so far as to say, I don't know if you're aware, but probably you are, that there was this whole sort of cover-up of, did aliens visit Earth? Did the government see them? There's a place called Area 59 in America that's very sort of secret place that's very well known. But that all happened in the 50s. And Master said, these things are real. He said, and they should not be kept from the public. Just recently, the U.S. government, space agency, NASA, acknowledged that they had had too many UFO encounters to deny it, and that they were going to join in the effort to search for extraterrestrial life. There's a group called SETI that has done this just as, casual civilians. And NASA said they will. The SETI has always been the weird fringe group that believes in life on other planets, and NASA said we will join in the effort now. So it's that we may even see something in our lifetime. I don't know. We've seen so much change in our lifetime, and the moon landing happened before. Not only to get people to the moon, but to get them back. And in the race to get to the moon, the space race or the moon race, the joke in America was at that time that if you wanted to get a man on the moon, first just try to get a dog on the moon. And if you could get a dog to be on the moon, the public would be so worried about that dog and what food would he have and who would care for him, that they would turn out all their pocketbooks and money to raise the money to bring the dog back. So we do have a sense of timelessness, though. Of course, in meditation, this is the first and the real thing, that in meditation, I probably should have built up and ended with this, but oh well, you're getting the punchline first. When you meditate and you feel suddenly removed from time and space, that's one thing. But the other is, if you have a deep experience, then later, when you recall that experience, you can feel it as if it's happening right now. It's vivid. It all just comes back. And put it another way, if you've had deep peace in meditation, and then you've had some meditations or lack of meditations, it can feel like that, oh, I used to feel so good when I meditated. It used to be so nice, and now it's just kind of hard work, or I feel dull, or whatever. And then, when that peace comes back, suddenly, it feels just the same. And even though maybe it was weeks ago or whatever, it's like there's no now I have to reconnect, I have to work my way. It just suddenly arrives again. And so we have a sense of that absence of time. Another thing is that even with memory, if we have a particularly strong emotional connection to a memory, even in thinking of that event, we may feel almost as if it's happening again. I went through a particularly difficult time with some friends some years back, and just the thought of that, just the memory, if my mind happened to go back to that, my heart would start racing again. It was so interesting because it was even before I could consciously understand what my thoughts were. I'm remembering this. I'm remembering how it felt. It didn't feel good. I didn't like it. That kind of thing. No, it was just sort of the mention of their names and my heart would start racing. It was a, deeper than conscious reaction. And that took a while for me to overcome. It was about a year before I didn't have that physical reaction anymore. And so, again, if you look at it from one lens, the body is reacting as if it's still happening. And if it's happening to me right in this minute, it isn't. But that's one sort of, you could say, disadvantage of too good of a memory. There's we saw an interesting documentary or whatever, a little news program about people who basically have super memories, in the sense that you just tell them a date and they can remember and tell you everything that happened to them on that date. I mean, they can't go so far as to remember what happened to other people, but they remember what happened to themselves on that date. And so they were given, some of them were given dates that, of course, the interviewer had known about their lives. I mean, they didn't say April 24th, 2 years ago. Did you have Uttapam? I mean, it's not like that. But so they told this one woman it was unfortunate. They said, they mentioned a date and she started crying. She said, "That's the date my father died." And of course, they had known these things. They talked to family members and so on, and they weren't trying to upset her, but they were just showing how not just the memory of the facts, but the feelings, everything came back. And to me, that's been reassuring also, because it reminds us that if we do forget things, all those memories are still there in the subconscious. They may be out of reach, but they're not gone. One man we know took Kriya initiation, and after practicing Kriya for some time, suddenly all this grief came up for him. I don't mean like in 5 minutes time, but over days and weeks of practicing it. And he suddenly remembered when his, I think it was his father had died, or his eldest brother, I can't remember. Anyway, when his father had died and his eldest brother was to become, he was in India, an Indian, his eldest brother was to become head of the family, but he was sort of not fit for that post. It was actually this man, who was at that time a boy, who was the one who ended up taking care of the family, but he was 11 years old. And he said he had completely forgotten that memory, that experience, that whole trauma. He had completely blocked it out. And so when it came back, he remembered the fact of it. But he said, but before then, it was if there was just a blank. There was a hole in my history. If you had asked me, I would have not brought it up. It was never in my mind. In fact, he had to go through a long process of healing, and even doing some therapy work with someone, really trying to let go of this grief. When he finally did, and he was able to look at it and re-experience it and heal from it, he suddenly found that because he liked to run, that he could run much faster than he had run before. He went to the gym and he found he could do 3 times as many pull-ups on the bar, just from one thing to the next, as he had that healing. That so much strength came back. He found some of his hair started turning back from gray back to black again. So it's amazing how much these things can weigh upon us, and sometimes we know what that weight is, and sometimes we don't. So that's a sort of a different conclusion that I was going for, but that's important too, to remember. That's why when they come up, let them come up and face them, heal them, because they want to be healed, they want to be released. It's just us holding on to something for too long. And so it's just that Divine Mother wants us to open our hands so she can take out the splinter. But out of fear of more pain, we hold on to it. Meanwhile, the splinter is not supposed to be there and it's causing trouble. But all she has to do is take it out and it's over. The injury that gave us the splinter in the hand is already past. And so I don't mean that the fact of me saying it makes it easy. But if we can just remember to try to relax, try to trust, and think of all the ways in which He's helped you already. And so trust that there's a beautiful scene in one of Swamiji's books, Love Perfected, Life Divine. And I'd like to go into that book, but I'll have to pause. I mean, I'll have to restrain myself. But it's a wonderful story. And the woman who is the hero or heroine of the book, she has to basically face her fears as part of a spiritual test. And the final test is that she has to walk willingly into fire And as she's approaching it, it's so hot, but her guru has told her this is the way forward for purification. And as she enters the flames bravely, which none of the other trainees, who all happened to be men, none of them had the courage to do, she did. And as soon as she entered the flames, she found they were cooling and healing. They didn't burn her at all. On the outside, they were hot. It wasn't like you walked, oh, this isn't fire, no problem. No, it seemed very threatening, but as soon as she entered, it was cooling. And so it's a wonderful image for tests, for facing our fears, for going forward with trust in the Guru. And we're not going to have a fire set up outside to test this on. But, to just embrace. And also, again, all we can do sometimes is just relax. Because, again, these things are out of our control. If something is in our control, it's usually not a fear. Just fix it. It's those things that are out of our control. And so to just relax and go into that flow and pray the whole time. But that takes time, of course, to grow in one's faith. But we can always take the next step. So the other thing, though, that I was pointing out was that this man had this trauma when he was 11, and he had no memory of it, and then through Kriya, he did remember it. It all came back. So in other words, if you feel ever worried about forgetfulness, or I kind of am not having as clear a memory as I would like, it's all in there. Everything is recorded in the subconscious, so we may have to access it, but it's not gone just because you can't think of it at the moment. And even one man told me after level 1, before I would never remember my dreams. Any night, whatever I did, I would not dream. He actually said he wouldn't dream. And I was thinking of saying, well, actually, you do dream, but if you think you didn't, it's just because you don't remember it. But I decided not to split hairs. And so he said, I never dream. Now I practice Hong Sa, and now I dream every night. Why? And so I said, well, it's probably because there was something in you that was either blocked or needed healing, and more energy is coming, and so these things then get corrected. It's pretty straightforward. And so, but it was an unusual example of that. But we'll often find that. I found after beginning meditation that I became much less physically clumsy. I would bump into things less. I would drop things less. If someone threw me something, I could catch it more easily. I think part of it was because on some level, I wasn't fully present. I wasn't fully aware. And so there may even been reasons for that. But in meditation, you're practicing being present. You're practicing being right here, right now. And you're practicing concentration. And then that practice also its purpose is to find God, but it has other benefits, which in our outer life then, we've rehearsed concentration in the morning, and so we're able to concentrate afterwards during the day. Now, we have another sense of the eternal now and of timelessness in a practical way through recordings, audio recordings, video recordings, and a good thing too. Because just, for example, this week we were listening to a recording of Master give a talk to the disciples. And though it was a recorded event from 1947 or 48, we all felt we were sharing. It felt like it was happening right now. The recording is so clear, which helps. And we could feel something. It wasn't just, let's listen to something that happened long ago. And so, of course, with video too, for example, videos of Swamiji, you can see him throughout different years. Photographs are one thing, of course, before video, but still, even video, when somebody moves and talks, it's so much even more real to our awareness that in time, you can remember the video. And you can't say, I remember the smells of the forest if he was outside, or I can remember what happened after. But still, we can remember that talk. We can remember, that experience. And so how different is it from being there? Obviously, We would love to be able to travel in time and all these things and spend time with everyone, people we've lost or people who we didn't have the chance to meet, all these things, certainly. But video goes a long way to making that more real, and it feels natural to us. So again, hints to make our mind more open to accepting that maybe we could move through time, or time wouldn't be such a limitation as it seems right now. Just in the way distance used to seem a limitation. Another very helpful thought with the eternal now. And the ultimate thought is just meditate in the eternal now, but maybe I'll get to that. One simple thing, though, is if you are having fear, if you are having trauma, if you're under pressure, just focus on what needs to be done in this moment. There was a time when I had a terrifying experience of having to be a kindergarten teacher for 2 weeks with 5-year-olds. And it was my first year as a school teacher, and I'd been working with all the ages, and so I knew the kids, but suddenly I had to be with them for the whole time. Their teacher had to be called away. And it was the last 2 weeks of the year. And so I just had to focus on, because if I started thinking, what about this, what about that, it was just too overwhelming. I had been a science and math teacher, so I would come in and do my science and then go out. And so it was very easy. You sort of go on stage, you do your thing, they discover about sand, and then you walk out. And so it was really quite easy. And so this was no. Then, and if there was any trouble, they'd start just sort of, would you like to? They belong to someone else, so you can just always turn to the authority and say, please handle the mess. And there was no one. And so I found that I started thinking ahead, and I got anxious about it. So what is happening right now? They are eating lunch. So let's just make sure. Are the little jaws chewing? Okay, fine. That's all I have to worry about right now, okay? The little sippy thing is being sipped, little drink and juice, and fine. Just now they are playing. Okay, make sure everyone lives through this, and no problem. Okay, now we're going to come back inside and we're going to have story time. Okay, I'm on page 1. This is all I have to think about. Page 2 is for later. And in that way, I got through it, because I could handle page 1 and then turning the page to page 2. And so you can use that if the thought of is too much, is that needed right now? Swamiji said, save future problems to be solved by future energy. In other words, when that day comes 2 weeks from now, when I have to take that exam or do whatever, let me pray that I have the energy to meet that test when it comes, but it's not now. Master talked about how people will complain about pains, or they'll be afraid about future, what if I die? He said it's better to die once than to die every day. And so it's, we look that in the short term things are probably just fine. And they probably will be fine in the future too. But the only time there ever is now. And we should make the most of it. We should use this time, for example, to find God, to come together, just as we have come together in satsang and thinking of God. And if we don't, I don't mean it in if we don't as some kind of punishment, but then we just get to come back again to now. Sometimes I've had a realization, or a thought, I shouldn't call it a realization, but I've had a thought and been, wow, that's a really good way to look at things. And then I've wondered, how many times in past lives have I had the same exact thought, as if for the first time? Just, let's get home. Let's get free in God, instead of just coming back again and again. Because the most terrifying thought in a certain way is supposing, what if this life that we have is actually our last lifetime? I don't mean our final. I mean our previous lifetime. We don't even know. You could say, it's sort of just a definition that whatever life I'm in is the present life. But what if we were just like this in the past life? It's a little frightening to just think of, here I am again and again and again, and still hungry, and still upset about this thing or that, or still wanting that still. And there's a more hopeful way to look at it, but sometimes it needs to be a little bracing just to think of enough already. Now you could say, and sometimes people do, that no, but isn't this life meant to be enjoyed, and there's so many pleasant things, and after all, it's God's creation, and shouldn't we enjoy it with God? And there's truth in that. But as Master says in Autobiography of a Yogi, the life experiences for the yogi begin to take on an anguishing monotony, just a painful sameness, just the same. Every breakfast, idli only. No sambar, no rasam, no plate, just a little stack of idlis, and that's all you get forever. It's kashtam. I mean, no matter how good your idlis are, they're not meant for every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You could say, what's the problem with that? Okay, for me it would be kashtam. So, this sameness, because our heart knows there's something more. We feel, and we have felt, in touch with a greater joy. In this life, yes, so we yearn for that again. And in past lives, which gives us a subconscious knowing, there's got to be something better. We can even almost say, I remember it. I can't quite remember it, but I can feel that I must be remembering it, though I can't put any details to the experience. So let's have that approach, that whether this is our final lifetime, or next lifetime is our final lifetime, or 100 lifetimes is our final lifetime, the only experience we'll ever have is being in the present right now. And so God is with us, as it says in the reading, just as much now as He will ever be. And if we come to Him and we say, as Master said, don't say, when will I have God? You have Him. Say, I have Him already. And love Him, He said. He never denies us. We deny Him. So we only need to stop denying, thinking that He's far away, thinking that Divine Mother is sort of just out of reach. She isn't. And we feel that again in meditation. We feel that in each other's company. I just had that experience this morning. I was, walking down the stairs, and the first person I saw, it was just such a joy to see the person, and it just really put a smile on my face, which the person could see because I'd walked down forgetting my mask, and I had to turn around and go back and get it. So remember that we can be in the now, and if the now is difficult, it will change. Everything is finite, and nothing lasts forever. And whereas we can, and we do last forever, and so we can, as Master said, don't be afraid of anything. Say, I and danger were born together, and I the eldest brother, more dangerous than danger. His words are so strengthening. And he said, laugh at delusion, watch it, and it cannot frighten you anymore. Okay, God bless you.